Imagine being surrounded by men who have sworn to protect the same empire as you. Now imagine seeing these same men turning their swords against the emperor, and you being the one who decides to remain loyal, not for glory, not for reward, but for honor. This is the story of a centurion forgotten by most, but who lives on as an eternal symbol of quiet courage. While everyone fled, Sempronius Densus stayed. The Praetorian Guard, created to protect the throne, sold itself for coins and promises. But he, with nothing but a staff and a dagger, faced his own brothers in uniform, alone. This is not a tale of fiction. It is a real account witnessed by Tacitus, Plutarch, and Cassius Dio. And if you think you've heard stories of loyalty, get ready to meet the most brutal of them. Rome fell silent that day, but the name of Sempronius Densus echoes to this day. The pages of history record emperors' battles and conquests, but they seldom speak of the men who sustained this empire with their own blood. Sempronius Densus was one of these men. Not a hero forged by poets, but a royal centurion of the Praetorian Guard in the middle of 1st century Rome. He served as Emperor Galba's bodyguard in one of the most unstable periods of Roman history, the troubled Year of the Four Emperors, AD 69. Galba, already old and frail, knew that he needed to name a successor, and everyone expected him to choose Otho, an influential ally who had helped him after Nero's death. But in an unexpected move, Galba appointed Piso Licinianus, a young man of noble lineage. This decision was the spark that ignited the betrayal. Wounded in his pride and consumed by ambition, Otho decided to act. He then began to bribe the very ones who were supposed to protect the emperor, the members of the dreaded Praetorian Guard. It was in this minefield of conspiracy that Sempronius walked every day, and there he made his choice. If you value stories of forgotten courage and honor in times of darkness, show that this memory will not be erased. Leave your like now and subscribe to the channel so that more people know who really supported Roma when everything was falling apart. Because names like Dense Sempronius only survive if we don't let them die again. On January 15th, 69 AD, just 5 days after Galba named Piso as heir, Otto's plan was revealed. He didn't wait any longer. Relying on the purchased loyalty of the Praetorian Guard, men trained to give their lives for the emperor, Otto proclaimed himself emperor, not in a ceremony, not in a speech, but with blood about to flow through the streets. The betrayal did not come with warning. Galba and Piso were being transported through the streets of Rome when they were surrounded. The sounds of armor clashing, the galloping of horses, the cold glow of swords, it all drew like an organized ambush. The killers came not from outside, but from within. They were not barbarians. They were the guards themselves, Roman soldiers with imperial insignia. Sempronius Densus was there, a centurion seeing his brothers in arms break all oaths. He saw death coming, and yet he decided to stay. Because there are times when fidelity to the truth is worth more than life itself. And he knew the next blow could be the last. While Galba and Piso found themselves surrounded by those who, until days before, had sworn to protect them, Sempronius Densus found himself in the eye of the storm. He was just one of dozens of soldiers, but at that moment everyone else had already chosen the side of betrayal. He was the only one still with his sword sheathed, and a clear conscience. The Praetorians were advancing, shouting orders and wielding blades. Many pressed him, "Join us! The new emperor is Otto!" But Sempronius, in silence, remained by the side of old Galba. He could have turned around, he could have guaranteed his life, but he preferred to keep his honor. He was not naive. He knew he would be massacred. Even so, he tried to persuade the traitors. He begged them to retreat, to remember Rome, the law, duty, but their hearts were already sold. The sword was now currency. and justice, a weak concept. When his appeals failed, he did not hesitate. He raised his vine staff, a symbol of the centurion's authority, and gave the first order of the day, "Don't touch the emperor." But no one obeyed. The scene that followed was described with astonishment by Plutarch as something almost impossible to believe. Sempronius, with his staff in hand, faced an armed mob that he had already decided to kill. When his words did not deter the Praetorians, he drew his sword. The struggle was not glorious, it was desperate. One man against dozens, one heart trying to prevent the collapse of Rome's honor. He advanced among the traitors, blocking the way to Galba, using his body as a shield, his blade as a last stand. Reports say that he shouted not out of fear, but out of order. "Retreat! This is treason!" But no one backed down. He hurt some. He received blows from all sides. He continued to stand until, in a brutal cut from behind, his knees were hit. The centurion fell, but not in surrender. Even on the ground, he continued to struggle, trying to protect the emperor with what was left of his strength. There was no reinforcement, there was no salvation, there was only him. And even so, he did not run away. Because Sempronius Densus knew that death is worth less than cowardice. With Sempronius finally vanquished, bleeding to the ground, and surrounded by former colleagues in uniform, now turned into executioners, the way to the emperor was clear. Galba, already old, tired and confused, did not even have time to react. One of the Praetorians came forward and beheaded him right there in the middle of the street. There was no trial. There was no hesitation. Just the dry sound of the blade against flesh and bone. Piso, the newly appointed young heir, fled in despair to a temple in an attempt to hide among the gods. But the gods remained silent. The Praetorians found him, dragged him out, and executed him with the same coldness. Within minutes, Rome had a new master, Otho. Treason had won. The Praetorian Guard, which once symbolized imperial protection, had stained its hands with the blood of 2 leaders and a centurion who dared to defy the tide. The streets were stained, but no one cried. The city went on in silence, as if nothing had happened. Only the echoes of Sempronius's struggle still hung in the air. Otto, now self-proclaimed emperor, rose to power, stained with blood and treachery. His reign began not with popular acclaim, but with fear, distrust, and a city in shock. The people knew what had happened: the brutal death of Galba, the cowardly execution of Piso, and the murder of an honorable centurion in front of all. Otho tried to control tempers, distribute favors, offer security, but nothing cleaned the taste of iron and mud left by the massacre. His power was fragile. His crown weighed like a corpse on his head. 3 months later, he would face Vitellius, a rival general who proclaimed himself the true lord of Rome. And the instability only grew. Rome had become a power board where death decided the next steps. But in this dark game, something unexpected happened. Vitellius, by conquering the throne, did justice. He ordered the execution of all the soldiers and officers directly involved in the death of Galba, Piso, and Denso Sempronius. It was as if Rome itself, the real Rome, cried out, "This man will not be forgotten." Because even defeated, Sempronius had won morally. Sempronius died alone, but his memory was never alone. Among so many names erased by the dust of time, his resisted. And he resisted not because he won battles or ruled provinces, but because at a decisive moment, he refused to betray his conscience. Tacitus, one of Rome's greatest historians, made a point of mentioning his attitude. Cassius Dio, in recounting the events of that bloody January, described him as the most worthy of being remembered. Plutarch did not skimp on words. The only man among thousands to act with dignity that day. And it is this detail that turned Sempronius into legend, not his strength, but his integrity. He was not a general, he was not a politician, he was just a centurion. But that's exactly what made it great. In times when everyone sold out, he remained faithful. In an empire of betrayals and ambitions, his sword defended values. And even though he fell, his gesture raised a truth. Courage, when it is real, crosses centuries. Rome had many heroes, but few have been as human and as eternal as he was. The story of Sempronius Densus is not told in the great arches of the Roman Forum. There are no statues in his honor, nor coins minted with his face. But perhaps that's exactly what makes your memory so powerful. He represents the unsung heroes, those who do right even when no one is looking, even when it leads to their deaths. The Rome he knew was made up of intrigue, ambition, and power plays, but he proved that there was still room for integrity in the midst of chaos. By standing while everyone else fell morally, Sempronius became greater than any title. And the most impressive thing is that he did not even receive favors from Galba. He fought not out of privilege, but out of duty. That says everything about who he was. It was not the victory that immortalized him. It was the choice. The decision to face death with honor, even without witnesses, even without guarantees. So every time Rome tried to forget its shame, the name of Sempronius resurfaced as an uncomfortable whisper that history refuses to silence. If we remember Sempronius Denso today, it is not because he survived, but because his choice survived. In the end, what he did was more than defending an emperor. He defended an idea. The idea that fidelity still matters, even when no one else believes it. That there is dignity in remaining true to what is right, even when everyone around bows to corruption. The road where he fell may be covered in centuries of dust, but his actions still burn like fire under the stones. And perhaps this is Sempronius's greatest legacy, to show that true power is not in the number of soldiers who follow you, but in the strength that makes you not give in when the whole world collapses around you. May your memory remind us that courage is not always winning. Sometimes it is simply not betraying. And if this story touched you, if this flame lit something inside you, so Sempronius Densus did not die in vain. He is still alive. In every choice we make, in every silent resistance against injustice. If this story moved you, if you felt that the courage of Sempronius cannot be buried by the silence of history, so do something for him now. Leave your like, comment on what marked you the most, and share this video with someone who needs to know what true loyalty is. Subscribe to the channel to continue rescuing forgotten voices from ancient Rome, because as long as there are those who tell, honor never dies.